It's been a few days now since the newly discovered wall clipping glitch in the stellarblade demo started making the rounds online. For those who don't know, using Eve's blink skill against a Guardian's blue fatal attack in a certain spot at the base of the parking garage will propel you straight through the wall into an entirely new area that was not meant to be accessible in the demo. After playing through the new area over the weekend and farming the new monster encounters over a couple hours, I must say that the new area is absolutely awesome. Even though it only accounts for an extra 40 minutes to an hour of new gameplay, depending on your pacing and level of exploration, the new area is absolutely packed with new content. The original plan was to upload a long play video playing through the section for the first time, but unfortunately my OBS didn't capture any audio for whatever reason, so my footage isn't exactly ideal. So rather than a long play video, which can wait for the full release to be honest, I thought I'd share some of my key highlights of the new section that stuck out to me, as well as some new insights that I was able to garner about what the rest of the game is going to be like after playing through this section. So without further ado, let's dive in, shall we? The glitch itself leaves you at the bottom of the parking garage, but in the full game, we will actually access this area from the rooftop after the Abaddon boss fight. After taking a rest at the camp, we'll now need to fight our way floor by floor down to the ground level. But on our way, on the second floor, we're going to find our first exospine, which can be upgraded later back at the supply camp not long after we find it. Once we hit the ground floor and find the two fusion cells that we need to open the garage door, we exit onto the street directly across from the deep crack, as Adam so eloquently puts it. From here, we run smack into one of the new monsters called the Dozer, which is arguably one of the more powerful and challenging enemies that we've encountered in the game thus far. A mutated cross between a horse and a bull, the Dozer charges and attacks with its armor-plated head, and it's the first enemy we encounter with both blue and purple fatal attacks, so the game makes it absolutely clear that we will need both blink and repulse skills early on to ensure that we can counter these attacks effectively. Once the Dozer is down, we can take one of the many branching paths from here, each of which lead to various monster encounters, various crafting and upgrade resources, including the material we're going to need to upgrade our exospine, as well as the second and third body cores that allow us to permanently increase our HP. We also find our second piece of gear, as well as our first omnibolt, which after quickly circling back to the supply camp on the second floor of the parking garage right before the Abaddon boss fight, allows us to upgrade and add our second gear slot. There's a few new puzzles in this area as well, the first of which is on the crate itself containing the omnibolt, a directional puzzle where the player has to enter in 16 directional inputs using the D-pad within a set time limit in order to unlock the crate. It was a bit tricky at first, not having any instructions and really just trying to have to figure it out on the fly, but it was easy enough to figure out after a few attempts, and overall I really like the design and look forward to encountering more of these mini-games and lock combinations in the full game. Back to the streets and the different branching paths, there's also some secret area as well that can be accessed by traversing a wall or climbing a series of ledges. And of course, I use the term secret very lightly, as the areas are as easy enough to find thanks to the scan mechanic as well as the yellow paint that's literally showing you the way. But oh well, modern gaming, it is what it is. Most of the branching paths in this area lead to dead ends. There's really only just the one main path, that being a door that requires yet another fusion cell, definitely seeing a pattern here, to unlock, which leads to a flooded area and ultimately into a semi-flooded elevator shaft. And here, I thought Eve would simply grab the cable and start climbing up hand over hand, when suddenly she starts zipping up using some kind of automated rappelling tool, which was totally unexpected and actually really cool. Once again, hats up to the devs at SkillUp, because they've clearly put a lot of thought not only into designing the various levels and the different types of topography and the environment that you have to traverse, but also the various and different ways in which you can actually explore and traverse that environment. Anyway, once we reach the top, we hit our second supply camp and we arrive at the metro station where we find our second puzzle and the end of this playable section. In order to restore power to the station and the train that you need to exit the area, you first need to tackle this puzzle on the terminal off to the side here. And the point of the puzzle is to equally distribute the 4 power units on the left into the 5 sections on the right. Again, pretty straightforward overall, but the fact that this is a puzzle that requires a little bit of brain power rather than just a switch that the player needs to activate or just a button to press is another nice detail and gives the game more of a survival horror, almost Resident Evil style vibe, and I am all for it. And it is here that this section and the additional gameplay that we're able to access ends, unfortunately, because as soon as you board the train, the game loads a little mini cinematic to let you know that you're going to be going to the next area. It fades to black and there's nothing more to load. The game soft locks. Fortunately though, by exiting and reloading your save, you start right back outside the train, and from here you have pretty much full reign to backtrack, practice, and farm the entire new area for money, experience, what have you. All in all, I'm so glad I came across this glitch before it was patched. While the additional areas and content only amount to about an extra hour or so of the game's runtime, there was so much to gain and to garner from the experience. Namely, a lot more insight into the game's pacing. Think about it, by the time we hit the metro station, we're about 2 hours or so into the game, and already we've fought our first boss, found the first exospine gear, the first 2 pieces of gear which add passive buffs, unlocked the second gear slot, the first full set of body cores and the HP increase. We have 2 out of the 3 cores that we need to permanently increase our shield, and our first damage and exospine upgrades. Essentially what I'm getting at here is that the game is doling out quite a bit in terms of resources and gear at a fairly steady rate, to the point where we are already at this point vastly more powerful than we were at the start of the game, and we're only a couple hours in. By extrapolation, I can only imagine where we're going to be after the first 10 hours or even 25 to 30 hours or to the end of the game. So if anything, I'm even more hyped for the final release than I was prior to playing this section. Speaking of which, that additional power is going to be needed, because another key takeaway from this additional area is enemy composition. This section is crawling, literally crawling with packs of enemies of different types. And there are multiple combat engagements where range specialists are paired with at least 1 or 2 melee types that are going to be rushing down your ass, while these long range types take shots at you from afar. Now this creates a completely new combat dynamic that we haven't really seen up to this point in the game. By contrast, most of the enemy encounters in the demo up to this point are isolated, and the enemies can be fought one-on-one. Other than the spider ambush, of course, but that's a one-off, so I'm not counting it. But in this new area, and especially in the parking garage, you will often find yourself outnumbered at least 3 to 1, and in some cases even more, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, you name it. So not only do you need to stay on your toes, but you're forced to change tactics entirely in order to stay alive. Typically when you're fighting enemies one-on-one, parries and counters will quickly eviscerate any enemy in your path. But compared to fighting a group of monsters, that strategy actually becomes very double-edged and even downright disadvantageous, as parrying one enemy's attack will leave you completely exposed to other enemy attacks, or even from attacks from other sides and from behind, since Eve can only defend one direction at a time. This makes kiting enemies and using wider arcing attacks or run and gun guerrilla tactics to whittle down your foes in order to create a more favorable 1v2 or even 1v1 scenario becomes an absolute must. And I gotta say, I am all for this. It's a fantastic gameplay loop. It's really leveraging at the enemy design, the combat style, Eve's skill set, and move list to the absolute limit. And I'm only more excited for the full release. Again, probably sensing a pattern here, but I cannot wait to see what kind of crazy combinations of monsters this game is going to throw at us. And it also makes me really hope, and I'm hoping it's not a hope beyond hope, that there is a hard mode once you've beaten the game for the first time that's going to push the difficulty and the enemy composition, the enemy encounters even higher. Anyway, I digress. What an absolute gem of a glitch. I'm so happy I came across this and managed to actually get to this new area before it was patched out. There's tons of new content, new combat encounters to farm and practice for the next couple weeks until the game drops. And to top it all off, the icing on the cake is that there really doesn't seem to be any penalty or downside for accessing the new area, because it's still possible after all this to go back and fight Abaddon. So if you access the rooftop from the other stairwell, the boss fight will activate as normal. It really doesn't seem that there's any downsides, but who knows, maybe my save file will be corrupted or not work as expected on release day, and I'll have to start again from scratch. Only time will tell, as I say. At any rate, that's all I got for this one. Stay awesome, Legends, and I'll see you in the next one.